How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Windy City Digits for a very special episode today. So, Vic, if you want to go ahead and get us started on this video.
Well, we are super pumped to have the opportunity to talk with our next guest. We'll be talking with a true professional in the NBA and one of the kindest people out there on radio TV. We're going to actually do a Who I Am game to see if you can guess who it is. So, he was born in Virginia and grew up in Seattle, wanting to be a sportscaster.
He just took him to school.
Had his own radio show as early as 1979 with WCFL AM 1000 and WLUP through 81.
Onions, baby, onions.
Was the public address announcer for the Bulls in the early 80s.
Ring it up from downtown.
Was a sports director for WGN Radio from 80 to early 90s, doing games for DePaul with Ray Meyer, pre and post games for the Bears, Cubs as well.
Book it.
He was a broadcaster for the Detroit Red Wings and University of Michigan in the 90s.
Oh, baby, what a play.
He was also Toronto Raptors play-by-play announcer from 98 to 2008.
Get out the salami and cheese, mama. This ball game is over.
And now the Bulls play-by-play announcer.
Amen to that.
Let's welcome future Hall of Famer Chuck Swirsky to the program.
Hello, Chuck.
Well, thank you very much. That was quite the introduction. I'm not sure I'm worthy of that. But now, do you guys go by V-Dubs and Coach, or should I call you Vic and Carl?
Either one works.
Call us whatever.
Vic and Carl works too, so it's all good. But we want to really thank you so much for your time this morning. I tried to do my best with your catchphrases. Hopefully, I did it some justice.
No, you did a great job. Better than I could do.
Thank you so much. So, look, Chuck, we're honestly honored to have this time to talk with you this morning. You've had quite the storied career. Started in Chicago, went to Toronto, came back. But we want to kind of go back a little bit further back. From Bellevue, Wisconsin, by way of Norfolk, Virginia, as a young man, Bellevue, Washington. What kind of inspired you to get into broadcasting?
Well, number one, I will say this to be very transparent about things. I am a horrible athlete, and that's why I love radio. And the truth of the matter is, I was always the smallest kid in the class. And for young people that are watching, or parents, or probably somewhere in between, let me tell you something. Just because your daughter or son may not be the most athletic, may not be the tallest, may not be the fastest, there's still a place in life and sports for you and for your children. And I am a prime example because remember, every year they would line up the kids in the gym and they would run baseline to baseline. And they'd find out in physical education who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's the biggest. And I was last. Okay? I didn't get the gene pool, but what I did get is love, complete, unconditional love from my parents, and who just showered me with support and encouragement. And to me, when I was a kid and I realized I was not going to be the next Brooks Robinson in my generation, great third baseman, Hall of Fame player with Baltimore. Mm-hmm. I was not going to be the next Oscar Robertson, who I idolized as an NBA player with the Cincinnati Royals, then with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
I was not going to be Bobby Orr of the Boston Bruins playing street hockey in our cul-de-sac in Bellevue. So all these things, forget football because I was just the football team I did. But I said, I want to be a sportscaster. And I knew at the age of 5, and I'm being very upfront with you, Vic and Carl, I knew at the age of 5, this is what I wanted to do. And I got hooked on the NBA when the NBA was not what the NBA is today, what the NBA wasn't even in the early, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, where everyone's jumping on the bandwagon.
Yep.
I remember the NBA when people said, like, okay, it's pro ball, but what's this all about?
Yeah.
Sure. I saw something or I read something about you when you were 5, walking around with a broomstick
Yeah,
handle,
I broke
pretending
my
like you're
mother's
in a.
broomstick, Vic. I broke my mother's broomstick and I hung it up from a light bulb and I used it as a microphone.
That was creative.
It's
Yeah.
great.
So who would you say? Oh, so you mentioned some athletes that that you kind of idolized. Who was your maybe favorite team growing up?
Well, because I grew up in Virginia, but we moved to Seattle. My dad got
Mhm.
transferred. So at that point, there were no Seattle Seahawks and there were no Seattle Sonics. And we had a Western Hockey League team called the Seattle Totems.
Okay.
And a Major League Baseball team came in for 1 year, the Seattle Pilots, in 1969. And then they went bankrupt, and Bud Selig bought the team and moved that franchise to Milwaukee. And so we were without pro hockey, pro basketball, pro football, and pro baseball. So the bigger than life kind of franchise, so to speak, from a brand was the University of Washington. And I grew up a huge Huskies fan, but the entire West Coast, I mean, I followed UCLA basketball when they were beginning their dynasty under John Wooden. And at night, certain stations would boom up the West Coast. And one was Bill King, the play-by-play announcer of then the San Francisco Warriors, now the Golden State Warriors. And he was a superb broadcaster. And I would go to bed listening to Warriors basketball.
Oh, so that's what kind of where your love for the NBA kind of started, I suppose, huh?
Well, he helped. And then the Sonics came in as an expansion team in 1967. And that was it. I mean, after that, like I was all Sonics.
All Sonics.
I could not believe that we finally had an NBA team.
Yeah, and then they moved.
Yeah, and back in the day, the Seattle that early team was like Sigma and Dennis Johnson, and those guys, and they had a pretty good team.
Yeah, they did. Carl, let me tell you a story. So I'm doing a glorified internship at KIRO Radio in Seattle. And I work for two really good people in the sports department. One was a great mentor in Pete Gross. So the Sonics in 1977-78 start off 5-17. 5-17. Yeah. They make a coaching change. Lenny Wilkins takes over. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden he says, I'm starting Jack Sikma. Now, Sigma is living in the same apartment complex as I am. And I really, bumped into him by accident. Yeah. And I said, I work at Cairo and Cairo Radio. And one of my jobs is to go get 20-second sound bites. You're going to see a lot of me in your locker room.
Yeah.
We became really good friends, same age, everything. So the Sonics turn around and they go on a major run.
Yeah.
And Carl and Vic, they end up going to the NBA Finals against the Washington Bullets, now the Washington Wizards. So this is Game 7 in Seattle. It was a 6:00 start time. The game was tape delayed on CBS. 6:00 start time.
Yeah.
My seat is on the baseline, just to the left of the Washington bench. Everyone's thinking Game 7 in Seattle, this is done. Done deal. No way Sonics are going to lose.
Right.
And what happens? Washington, Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld, and there was a key play in the game. There was a loose ball. Mitch Kupchak, who played in the NBA, was the GM of the Lakers. Now he's the GM of Charlotte. Picks up a scrambled loose ball, puts it in, gets fouled. That was the turning point in the game. The Sonics lose at home in Game 7.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that. Next year, the Sonics won the title in a rematch with Washington. But there you go, a little Sonics history.
Your memory is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that back in the days, those weren't tape delayed on CBS after the late news. Those are when the games would be on. But like Chuck, you've had quite a storied career. and you've covered a ton of events. Are there any specific events in your head that really kind of stick out to you?
Well, from a Blackhawks standpoint, the Stanley Cup. I mean,
Okay.
I went to Stanley Cup games. Exciting, so exciting with Kane and Taves.
Mhm.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Corey Crawford in the nets. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
won 3 cups in what, 7 years?
Correct.
So that was exciting. The Bulls championship run. I was here for the first 3 covering as a reporter. I wasn't involved at all with the Bulls organization. I was at WGN. I was not here for the last 3. I was at the University of Michigan doing their games with the tail end of the Fab Five and then Tractor Trailer and that group. But then, you look at baseball. Unfortunately, I wanted to see a World Series Cubs game, never made it. But during my span in Chicago, which covered 2 times, actually, the one currently from 2008 and then the one from 79 to 94.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Bears Super Bowl, to me, to be at a Super Bowl with your team like the Chicago Bears.
Right.
And because I grew up in Washington and Virginia, we didn't have a team. So the early games at 10 a.m. in the morning, West Coast time, a noon kickoff in Chicago.
Right.
So we would get 10 a.m. games in Seattle. And I remember as a little boy watching these games, and this team had a C on the side of their helmet. I thought it stood for my name. It's true. I said, Mom, because my friends back home call me Charlie. I grew up Charlie, not Chuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I said, Mom, there's a football team called Charlie. What?
That's
I'm a
awesome.
kid. And she goes, let me look. And she goes, no, that's a team. It's Chicago, the Chicago Bears.
Bears.
I said, it's not about Charlie.
I think we're going to make some T-shirts, Charlie, and wear them to
Yeah, we're gonna have to
the
play
Bulls
the
game.
Yeah. So
I am telling you the truth. I was let down, because but so I became a Bears fan, huge Bears fan. And I mean, whether it was the 63 Bears, I mean, I'm dating myself now, but as a kid, I gravitated to the first NFL team because they were on TV all the time. There weren't a lot of teams in the NFL in the early to mid 60s, and the AFL was starting to come into play. So we would get Bears games at 10 a.m. and we'd get the San Francisco 49ers and the Rams
in the later game.
1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was like crazy.
Well,
And the other event probably was the Kobe 81 game because I called that for the Raptors.
Right.
And that was amazing game.
I can imagine.
We've heard your comment. We're going to get to that in a couple minutes here. So now that we've kind of gotten a little bit on your background, we kind of get a little bit of your take with the Bulls right now. We love listening to you and Bill on the Bulls broadcast on the Bulls radio network. And you guys have some great chemistry, which makes it for a very entertaining listen. Sometimes I even turn off the TV and listen to you guys because it's just an enjoyable
Thank you.
listen. And I personally think chemistry is a big part of what makes a team successful. So you're around the team, we kind of like to get your take on the chemistry of this team and kind of decision, not really to add many pieces, but to really kind of run it back with the current team that we have from last year. Just kind of share your thoughts with us on that.
Well, I think character is really, really important. I think that you have to have skill, no question about it. You got to have players who can play.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could have the greatest coaches in the world, but if you don't have players, you're not going to win. So let's make sure we get something understood. As you guys know, Vic and Carl, you've been around sports a long time. If you don't have the talent, you can have the second coming of John Wooden in college basketball or Coach K. You can have Phil Jackson, and he could be coaching and expand. You're not going to win if you don't have players. So I get all that. Let's take talent and let's put it here for a second. You've got to have sacrifice. You have to have discipline. You have to have selflessness, and you've got to check your ego at the door. ego is very healthy as an athlete because you wouldn't be in the position you're in if you didn't have an ego to believe in yourself and confidence. And I agree with that. However, ego can also destroy you. It can destroy you as a person. It can destroy you as an athlete. And one of the greatest elements of a successful team is saying to yourself, okay, you know what? I've got to blend in. I've got to be a team. That doesn't mean that you're going to lose your attributes of what you're bringing to the table. But I can, if you look at the big picture with Jordan and you go back to game 5 of the 91 finals and Phil Jackson calls that timeout and they are picking up Jordan at midcourt. They're trapping him. They're taking the ball out of his hands. He's starting to get restless because he wants to be MJ on the stage.
Yeah.
And Phil Jackson says, who is open? Paxson.
Yeah.
Give him the ball.
Yeah. That was an amazing.
It's a great story. I mean, and MJ bought in.
Yeah.
And so something, Vic and Carl, I think as an athlete or whether you work on LaSalle Street in banking, whether you work at Jewel in the produce department, whether you guys are doing a podcast, you got to buy in. Because if you don't buy in, you're not going to win. So the Bulls this year bought in. Arturas and Mark brought in people who are going to buy in. We know what Levine can do and DeMar DeRozan, but you know what? You still have to buy in. What Vooch has done since coming over from Orlando, this has been hard for him. He was an all-star with the Magic.
Yeah, we talk about that too, yeah.
And he was on the scouting report. He was always, with all due respect to Aaron Gordon, when you came to the Orlando scouting report, Vooch was number one, period.
Yep.
And so now all of a sudden he comes in and his game's changing. And, listen, I'm sure it's hard on him, but he bought in.
Yeah.
And for a guy to average 18, 11, 17, and 10, I'll take that any day of the week. I love the guy.
Absolutely. And you know what? Bulls fans gave Vooch a very difficult time, I'd say, this year too. And I think it was very hard for him to be now the third guy on the team. Yeah. So that was tough for him. So in terms of AK and Mark Eversley coming in, how do you think they have produced this climate now where they've all bought in? What have you seen?
Well, the first thing they had to do is they had to make the Bulls franchise relevant. Listen, the fans were becoming, restless. I get that. But I'm talking about from an NBA landscape standpoint that, you were hearing about Golden State, you were hearing about the Lakers, you're hearing about Boston, you're hearing about Philadelphia. And I'm thinking like, we're in the mix. Like, with all due respect to Boston and Philly and Miami and Golden State and the Lakers, this is Chicago.
Yeah.
This is the city of broad shoulders, to quote Carl Sandburg. And, the Bulls in the Jordan era, but even in early Rose before he went down, the Bulls are the Bulls. You can go back to Jerry Sloan, Norm Van Lier, Bob Butterbean Love, Chet Walker, Tom Boerwinkle. There are some players that have come through here that have been really, really, really good.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you can talk about the Jordan Pippen era, but the truth of the matter is, even before they arrived, they may not have won a championship, but they represented this city with hard work and grit.
Yep.
And we were losing that. And so AK and Mark come in and said, we got to restock the cupboard here. And the foundation is starting to, crumble a little bit. And so you bring in a guy like DeRozan and you bring in guys like Caruso, and then even parts that fill the puzzle like a Javonte Green.
Oh
Mhm.
God,
Yeah.
yes.
Like I think Javonte Green has a ceiling that we haven't seen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
see this, from the player standpoint, from player development staff. I think there's more to his game that we haven't seen. I really believe that because he's athletic, he has passion, his motor is off the charts, and
Yes.
I want to see where he can go with an offensive skill
Yeah.
set if it's in the toolbox, and I
Yeah.
think it is. So
I agree.
So, kind of a quick follow up with that, Chuck. Like, Zach was here and went through some rough years before AK and Mark came in. How important do you think it was to get Zach to buy in and to kind of because Zach bought in, and I think that just kind of started the ball rolling. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Listen, Zach, as we know, is a very gifted athlete,
Yeah.
and Billy Donovan is on the same page with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing is that Zach wants to be coached. He wants to win.
Yeah.
And when I say, he wants to win, 45 wins, 43 wins, 41 wins, whatever it's going to be, that's not good enough for Zach.
Right.
And it's not good enough for DeRozan. And it's not good enough for any player who walks in to the Advocate Training Center, because at the end of the day, you want to be at Grant Park in late June.
Yes, correct.
Yes, you do.
And so if, when players say, I want to win, well, that statement to me confuses me, because why are you competing? You want to compete for a championship, not to say, hey, we got the 5th seed, we got the 8th seed, we got the 3rd seed. In some cases, you take baby steps.
Yep.
And I get that. And the Bulls had to get, they made the playoffs, outstanding. But going into 22 and 23, realistically, you got to put that in the rearview mirror. This is a new season.
Yep. And
so when it comes to chemistry, when it comes to production on the floor, you have to focus in now on, the 22-23 campaign.
Yeah.
Because you can build off what you did a year ago, and you learned a lot about yourself and what it takes to win, and the sacrifice that you have to make, and how hard it is to win an NBA game. And it's very hard to win an NBA game, period.
Absolutely.
Forget about, 72-10, which was unbelievable.
Mind-blowing. Yeah.
I'm just talking about, we got a game Tuesday night. How are we gonna win this game?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Whether it's coaching staff, matchups, players, whatever, players of availability. So I think Zach has learned so much under Billy Donovan, and about the front office saying, okay, Zach, you know what? You got to trust us. We want to re-sign you. We need you here. You're the face of the franchise.
Yep.
But
that's huge.
You other players, and you have to trust us, and then you have to trust them as much as they can trust you. So I think it works in a lot of different layers.
So Chuck, with the injury to Lonzo coming out and saying that he's not going to be ready for the beginning of training camp, possibly the beginning of the year, how do you see the Bulls rotation panning out?
Well, that story by ESPN, that has not been confirmed by the Bulls.
Okay.
So I'm kind of reluctant always to talk about injuries, because I really don't know.
I hear you.
Status. I can tell you about the guard situation.
Yeah, with Dragic and Terry.
And hopefully things work out with Lonzo. But collectively, I would say that, they do have depth. Dragic, I hope people understand this. Dragic is a terrific addition to this team.
Mm-hmm.
But
absolutely,
he's not a 35-minute-a-night player like he once was.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep things in perspective. He's crafty. He's incredibly smart. He knows how to play the game. Mm-hmm. He is a great get for the Bulls. And any young player will see his professionalism and see how hard he works.
Yeah.
This guy has been an amazing amazing talent.
So
Period.
when are you going to bring up to Dragic about the D Rose dunk on him?
You know what? He's getting heard enough about that, and probably on media
From other
day,
people?
I think on media day he's probably going to have to address that, and then we'll turn the page. You know what? Derek
That's
dunked
good.
on a lot of people. That dunk was, has left an indelible mark in so many people. I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday, and so. But he's now a Chicago Bull, and
we're all Bulls.
Yep.
Yeah, and Chuck, before we let you go, back in the day, I used to listen to you a lot on WGN when you were WGN. Back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot of sports talk on the radio. I mean, it was basically you and Chet Kopic and Les Grobstein were kind of the main guys back then. But we want to ask you about your DePaul days. What your thoughts are about DePaul days? I know that's something that's very near and dear to your heart, and I know you really enjoyed your time with Coach Meyer.
I did.
Kind of share with us a little bit about that time.
Well, it's ironic that you should bring up DePaul and Coach Ray. And, one of my dear friends was on the staff, Jim Molinari. In fact, the two assistants, Jim Molinari and Joey Meyer. Mm-hmm. And when I was in Seattle with Jack Sikma, Jack played at Illinois Wesleyan, and the point guard on that team was Jim Molinari. So when I left Seattle and moved to Chicago, Jack said, you got to look up Jim Molinari. He's, one of my best friends. He's an assistant at DePaul. And so I was immersed in DePaul basketball. We're talking about Aguirre, and we're talking about, Cummings, and we're talking about Comegys and Rod Strickland and Kevin Edwards. Mm-hmm. And my last year with DePaul had Tom Kleinschmidt.
I used to play against him in grade school.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you what, that DePaul run they had in the late 70s to about maybe late 80s was remarkable.
Yeah.
And their recruiting, especially in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, the WGN, the TV superstation, booming into California, so they could get a guard by the name of Tony Jackson. Dallas Comegys had a Roman Catholic high in Philadelphia, would turn on the television after he got home from practice. All these things. It was incredible. Yeah. And so, it was so much fun. And being around Coach Ray, most of our conversations, actually, I'm being upfront with you, Carl and Vic, were not about basketball. We talked a lot about life.
Yeah.
We talked about experiences. And I think about Coach Ray quite a bit. He was so impactful just with his wisdom. Mm-hmm. And, for a man who achieved so much in his career, over 700 wins, over 40 years of coaching, beloved by everyone, that, he never took himself seriously. He was coach.
Yep.
That was it, coach. He would go from DePaul to his home in Arlington Heights. He'd go from Arlington Heights to his home. He thought Wendy's was Jim Molinari's aunt. He didn't know.
That's funny.
So Chuck, before we let you go, we like to do this thing with our guests called Rapid Fire, just to ask some really quick questions for you. So just a couple quick ones. The Kobe Bryant 81-point game or the Michael Jordan 69-point game? Which is one of those two? Or one of, I know you were up close with the Kobe Bryant game.
Wow. I'm gonna go with Kobe.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Tea. I've never had coffee in my life.
Oh, really?
Never, not one drip.
Other than basketball, if you had a chance, would you cover baseball, football, or hockey?
Baseball.
Okay. Radio or TV?
Radio.
Okay. The Air Canada Center or United Center?
Both.
Okay. I know you have fond memories of both.
That's good. Yeah.
And then this is kind of a trick question, roundabout way of, I know you're not much into predictions or anything, but how many Swirsky shuffles can we expect to see this year?
Hopefully a lot.
Okay.
I gotta get new material though. So
no. I love.
You gotta send me some links.
I love it.
Because
love
I
it.
love
We
the
love
it.
Swirsky Shuffle.
So I'll give you a quick story. Do we have like 2 minutes?
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I've known Steph Curry a long, long time.
Hmm.
And his father played for the Raptors. I remember Steph as a little boy. So I see him with the Warriors and Bulls every time, I get a chance, spend a couple of minutes with him before a game. He's at the United Center, and before he takes the floor to do his incredible routine, pregame routine, ball handling skills, and then where he does this shot, as you know, from way down in the corner. So we're talking, and I said goodbye to him, and I'm walking down the hall. He says, "Say, Chuck, one other thing." I turned around and said, "What, Steph?" And he goes, "You're not dancing tonight."
Wow.
Well, I hope there's over 50 dances.
I do too. That would be
yeah.
awesome.
Look, that you're well known now on Twitter for all that. That's great.
I love it.
Awesome. Listen, Chuck, we love your positivity that you bring on Twitter all the time. We both, Vic and I, follow. We definitely listen to you on the radio. Thank you so much for your time today. We do appreciate it. We'll be listening and following. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure, Carl. Vic, thank you. And I wish you all the best. And boy, this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chuck.
And you just finished watching our interview with Chuck Swirsky. Welcome back, everyone, to Windy City Digits. That's Vic. I'm Carl. So very cool moment for me and Vic recording that video. First and foremost, Vic, Chuck Swirsky is the nicest guy ever. Very gracious with his time. So, Chuck, thank you so much for your time today and spending some time talking with. So, Vic, just kind of share your thoughts about what you thought about the interview.
I just thought it was cool digging into his memory bank. That guy has got a stellar memory. Just to remember, remembering minutes and times of games back in the 60s was impressive.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really cool, too, when we mentioned about Lonzo, how he was really professional, and he said he couldn't deny or confirm that wasn't confirmed by the Bulls at all, and that was just through ESPN. That's big news.
Yeah, and I think his insights about the team I thought was really good. Especially talking about sacrifice and playing for one another. You got to have an ego, but you also got to check it at the door. I thought was really good. So. Overall, we hope you guys really enjoyed the interview. It was a lot of fun for us to do. It was fantastic for us to spend some time with him today.
We're jumping off the walls.
So thanks everyone for checking out today's video. We do appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance yet, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified on future episodes, and we do some more interviews, hopefully with some other local radio broadcast, TV broadcast stars soon. Thanks everyone for checking us out. We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Love
and digits.